this goes without saying. I mean, this is a story about a murderous madman, but I think it's just interesting to sometimes to get into the gray area of things and just sort of get away from the black and white thinking.
Hello, this is Jenni Zylka from the Berlinale Panorama section from the selection committee. I'm very pleased to introduce to you the director of Ted K in this year's Panorama program, Tony Stone. So, hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Okay, so maybe first of all, thank you for this really impressive film. Maybe you can sum it up for somebody who hasn't seen it in your own words in just a few sentences.
Okay. Well, Ted K is about the infamous Unabomber, Theodore Kaczynski. And we follow him in a very subjective realm on his actual land in Montana. So we filmed it exactly where the original Unabomber the actual Unabomber had lived, and retrace his footsteps, use people that knew him. And the tale has obviously been known for a while, but there's a lot of elements to the story that we thought were very interesting and kind of left out of the usual summation of his life. So it jumps in with him sort of midstream of his existence, and then follows him sort of to the end, when I won't give away the end in case you don't know what it is, but he was exposed to the world, and we knew the name because for over 25 years he lived in a remote cabin, and nobody knew who was carrying out these mail bombs until 1996.
Yes, it's about a living person, but still it's quite the opposite of your average biopic in a way. So what made you choose this guy to make your film about?
I think just his existence was so fascinating. Of just the living off the land, this sort of Thoreau character, but and his self-sufficiency, and the fact that he was able to paralyze the United States through his mail bombs while he was living in a cabin with no running water or electricity. And kind of took a glimpse into his diaries and realized that there was this other layer to it, and it was the kind of story where, as he kept digging deeper and deeper, it got more and more interesting, and just a very dynamic, complicated mess of a character.
But did you get him in a way? What did you learn about him, about this character?
Did we get him? I mean, I think the performer Charlton really just transformed into him, and I think for us doing 10 years of research on this film, we walk away from the film being, again, this really is him. That this is the essence, and that's where, one part of this experience that I'm really happy about is just feeling like this is as close as you could get, from the performance, from the place, where his cabin is now, where his cabin used to exist, where we filmed has now been bulldozed and graded, and a house is going to be built there. So this kind of last moments also capture this accuracy.
Talking about researching for such a long time, maybe you can say something about this, for me, very interesting concept of letting him speak in his own words, because you had all these manifests and diary parts.
Yeah, I mean, there's about 20,000 pages of writing. So we did go through almost all of them. And that's where we were able to kind of pull stuff that was there was an inner wit to the guy, as that was sometimes really clicked, and it was us just wanting to kind of just curate to distill those 20,000 pages into sort of what we thought made him tick.
Did you, as a filmmaker, did you also have to kind of have a distance to him, in digging into his personality, because after all he still was a murderer, or somebody who's doing not the right things? So did you have to have this kind of distance to him?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that this goes without saying. I mean, this is a story about a murderous madman. But I think it's just interesting to sometimes to get into the gray area of things and just sort of get away from the black and white thinking. There's definitely distance. I mean, I think we're talking about subjectivity by how intimate we are with him, but obviously it's also like we're not trying to infer too much by specific actions. We are just in the moment, the day to day. So I think there's actually an objectivity that comes out of that that's really interesting.
In your film, there are only hints to the backstory, or to his past life, to his when he was young or something. We more or less have this. We are together with him for a certain time, and this time we get to know him. As I said before, normally or most of the times, biopics try to make the whole life of somebody available. So you decided to have this certain part of his life. Of course, that's the part where something happens, but still, can you say something about that, about choosing this particular point of time to show him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really sort of this looking at this period where he was just starting to, go out and become more lethal to the outside world with his homemade devices that he was making in his cabin, testing in caves, testing in the wilderness. So, it's sort of a little bit of condensing of where, of the actual timeline, but also want to leave the timeline open, so the thing doesn't date things. You really are just in the moment, but it was really starting with sort of the local encroachment and then going to the national, like I keep saying. And it's and so yeah, it's sort of this 5-10 years before he was arrested, and that's really when things accelerated. That's when the Unabomber name really started in sort of the mid early 80s, and then by 1996 he was arrested. So just certain actions were sort of representative of maybe 4 or 5 other actions. So it was a way to just sort of boil things down to just just to this sort of fabulistic American violent tale.
And do you think there's also something that we can all learn as viewers or as the audience from the picture, maybe to avoid that people have mindsets like this or something? Is there something that we can all take out of it and say, okay, so these things happen, what can we do to make them not happen?
I think it's kind of for the audience to draw its own conclusions with that. I wouldn't want to say, but I think it's just, it's very clear that, this is not something you want to mimic or be inspired from, for sure. So it's, I think we're taking away just sort of, there's just a, sort of a melancholy to the tale, and just, dealing with isolation more than anything else. And I mean, I think some of the, his personal existence mixed with his ideas, it's, it's a, just a commentary of sort of the, the new world we live in,
You right, Ted?
Can't get this. I can't get this around. It's not.
Ted, it doesn't work.
Huh?
It's broke. It's broke. Just hold on real tight. Whoa! I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Ted. Sorry, Ted. I won't do it again. I promise. Oh, shoot.
What I also liked very much was the camera work that gave this impression of isolation very well in a way, because we see him in this cabin and we see the mountains, and it's very easy to feel his isolation because of the photography. I think also maybe you can say something about that, about the photography.
Sure. I think we wanted to, once again, just embed ourselves in the land, and the land was such a character for obviously the film, but also just Ted being such a lonely person, in the wilderness were just, obviously so important to him and what he wanted to protect. At the same time, he was okay with littering, so there was sort of an interesting hypocrisy in it. But I think the camera work, we wanted to really sort of celebrate his environment, and just and sort of as we're going through ecological collapse, it's kind of like there's sort of a mourning to some of the the visuals of just exquisite, mountains and woods. So that was part of getting into his headspace of how he felt.
It there in the place where it really happened, was it also part of the concept from the beginning?
That was, yes, and it was, it seemed like a crazy pipe dream. Yeah, the idea was really to, once again, retrace the steps. Knowing that if we were there, it would have an impact on us as filmmakers, on the actor.
And did it have an impact?
It definitely did. It definitely did. When you're in caves that he probably like tested, explosives, or just the story of us finding where to put the cabin is, there's haunting, moments of like, well, we think the cabin was here. You start digging around and you find a concrete footing that says 1971 etched in the concrete, and that's David and Ted writing that when they built the cabin together, over 40 years.
Can you say something about casting your main actor, Charlton, who was really, really impressing in this film?
Yes, that was an interesting sort of way it all unfolded. It was just doing an open call, and there had been a bunch of other Ted Kaczynski scripts floating around, and I think Charlton had actually read another one, so he kind of knew about the story, and then saw our script and realized there was a whole nother layer to this man and story. So he just did an incredible bunch of tapings of what I saw, and then he just did one and came in like a week later than everybody else, and it was just a remarkable performance, and just had the Ted voice and Ted essence, and it was just like, oh, this is it. There's no question that this is the guy. And it was just always felt like this whole moment during the making, that the sort of filmmaking, that just the stars had aligned, and I really couldn't imagine anybody else playing this role. And
can you say something about the script? Because I suppose there were not so many dialogues, or only monologues. If so, if he has to say something, it's a monologue more or less. So he had to probably describe a lot of what's going on in his head. Or how did the script look that you gave him?
Yeah, the script is very, it's a lot of moments, so it's just sort of like a lot of little actions that are, cumulative, so yes, there's the dialogue was quite minimal, but a lot of obviously diary entries, just curating those was really important, but he also did have, some relationships with neighbors, was a hermit, but also had, close relationships with local librarian, would get rides from people. So, the script is pretty close to actually how the film ended up being. But, it's definitely a different, type of, of script writing, when you're trying to write for a hermit, and it really just sort of, it's a lot of small moments that add up to, a full story.
Can you say something about the music? Because that's something that I liked very much too. So I think, in my opinion, some of the score sounded like Vangelis or something, some 70s electro sound, and I really liked it. I think it really fit to the character of him. So maybe you say something about the score.
Sure. Yeah, the score was done with Blank Mass. It was an amazing UK musician, and I think we wanted the music to be sort of represent encroachment too of the the technological world. So obviously Ted would despise some synth music, but it also was this sort of the representative of sounds of the outside world, that sort of he could never get away, and that was one idea that drove him mad, was that you could never get away from the evidence of the technological society, the planes in the sky, whatever it is, the drone of the machine, so that was kind of where we started, but then we also wanted to have some of Ted's music too, to his experience, which is mostly Baroque, so there's a lot of Baroque music in there, and there's something so mathematical obviously about Baroque, and also just sort of representative of sort of the absurdity of the human condition. So that kind of just worked really well to kind of go back between the two, and I think sonically there's also something very similar. So but I think just as something that matched, once again, the visuals, so it needed to be very, very alive and very kind of match the content sonically in terms of the, the intensity sonically,
So as a last question, it's a big question, but maybe you can help us. It's about the pandemic and the world of cinema after the pandemic. What do you think? What do you think will change for all of us living from this kind of art?
I think movies will come back even stronger. I mean, I can't wait to go to the movies, and I imagine if I'm feeling that way, other people are. And I think we're kind of, we're going to be very excited to have shared experiences. And obviously, cinema is at the forefront of that. So, I think, and I'm sort of optimistic about it. I think it's going to happen sooner than we think. And I don't know, it's a really interesting time. And I think, it'll be interesting how cinema is going to come out of this. But I think if there's any sort of fear of the theatrical experience being, lost after we've all gone online, if anything, I think it's going to be the opposite, because I just think, it's how sicker we are at looking at screens.
I think I go with cinema comes back stronger, what you said at the beginning. I think I go with that. So thank you very much, Tony Stone. Thank you for this film and good luck to you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.